Good morning. We're going to do this gazebo in Rockport. Beautiful. It's a beautiful spot and it's a wonderful place to learn how to paint some rocks. I know you all like that. All right, I'm dropping the sky in here. This is a little bit of cobalt blue mixed with Windsor blue or phthalo blue. So I'm just covering that sky, letting it come down in a nice wash. Dropping in a little color. You know, when you have an enclosure like that, it's always better to enrich the color. It always looks a little brighter. All right, I'm just doing the side, the rocks here, the top of the rocks. They go from light to dark, okay? There's less water, less surf pounding up there. So they're getting more light, more sun. They get brighter, they bleach. And then as they come down, you know, the lower rocks are getting more surf and more pounding and more, they get beat up. They're more dirt and grime and all kinds of stuff pounding those rocks when the tide changes. You know, every day, a couple of times a day, that tide is pounding there. So, all right, so I'm taking a towel here and I'm just bringing some light on top of the rocks. Not, you know, you don't have to take it all off, but there's going to be areas of the rocks where it's really very light, as you can see. Okay, so just picking out some rocks. All right, so as they come down, they get darker and warmer. So I'm adding a little bit of quin sienna to the raw sienna for the next strip there of just a little bit warmer. You know, we're going to get into the darker rocks shortly, but okay, there's a little bit of surf, there's a little bit of sand and, you know, ground. The ground comes in here and the rock is sitting on that, so I'm just placing that in there for now, just to cover the white and get some color in there. All right, so here's the darker rocks. It's not quite, you know, it's going to get a lot darker than this, but as you can see, as we move down, it gets darker and warmer. You know, the waves are hitting that area. The ocean comes up in there, and you notice that there's a line. There's actually a line that goes right across. That's the level of the water when the tide comes in. You know, certain days when it's a high tide, it goes up to that area and it brings the seaweed and all the grime with it, so it creates that that level across the rocks. So be aware of that when you're in the area of tidal activity, you know. All right, so just warming up that edge. It's very irregular, so all right, so this is the big shape of the rocks, and I'm just, you know, just getting that covered with different temperatures. All right, we're doing the side of the wall now. I put a little gray, but it needed to be warmed up, so I added a little bit of quin sienna to the cobalt blue that was there, and that looks dark, but it's going to get a lot warmer as it a lot lighter as it dries, so be aware of that. So I'm just creating that line between the wall and the rocks. And there's the gazebo. It's all made of beautiful stone. Okay, just bringing that in. Dropping a little blue in there, a little cool colors. It's just a mixture of warms and cools. This would be a good time to go in and tap that with your towel and create some cobblestone look, you know, that stone look. But I didn't do it, but you can do it right now. I go in and later and change it. All right, I'm using a moist brush here, and I'm just lifting off some more light on the lower rocks. The rocks are a big focus of this painting. The gazebo is obviously the subject, but the rocks play such an important support role here. It's a good chance to paint some rocks. All right, just taking a damp brush, softening the edges where the paint moved in and dried, and I'm taking a towel now and just going in again, lifting off the light, especially on those top rocks, but everywhere. And I'm just dropping some gray. This is cobalt blue with a little touch of quinsiena to darken it for the rooftop there. And as I put it on, I realize it's a little too dark. It's going to dry lighter, but I think what I'll do is take a damp brush and lift off some of that pigment. All right, I'm just painting in the supports. Some of them are much darker than others, and that gives it the sense of form. You know, the supports in the back are underneath the gazebo roof there, so they get a lot darker. Okay, and this is just ultramarine with a little touch of sienna, a quinsiena. Alright, just painting in around that little bit of dark area so you can, it gives it some form. It looks like you can see through that hole onto the other side, and a little bit of it is showing. Alright, so some of these supports are lighter than others, as I said, so you want to go in and either drop some raw sienna into it, or I'm touching it with a towel. See, I'm touching a couple of them with a towel just to make them, you know, give it a sense of light on the bottom of it. All of that helps to, and little dark edge on the rooftop. Alright, this is what I should have done earlier, is touch up that stone wall with a towel, so I have to do it with paint here. So I'm making the edge a little darker. There's a tiny bit of an overhang there, so it creates a little shadow. And now I'll just drop some colors, warm and cool. This is a cobalt blue with a little touch of raw sienna. And I'm just going to spot it along there to create a sense of stone. All right. And there you go. So just go in and pick out a few lights with a towel. The ones closer to you will be a little bit bigger than the ones in the background there. All right, this is where we're going to really work on the rocks now. It's a big part of the painting. I'm just taking some raw sienna. This is for the cracks and crevices in the rock, and you know, take a good look at the photo, study the photo, and just get some inspiration from it. You don't have to. We're not looking to do a portrait of the rocks here, so we're just getting some inspiration on the shapes and how the key to painting rocks is just understanding that it's all facets. You know, every time a rock turns, every time there's a different facet, the light changes on it. So it's either going to be darker or lighter depending on how it turns. And I'm just taking my brush and creating some crevices and some cracks in the rocks. And so as it comes down, it's going to get much darker here. So I'm just mixing up some quin sienna, and I put a tiny bit of rose in there. And I'm just going to paint this whole section of lower section of rocks, and you can see that line going across. That's where the tide comes in. That's the top of the, you know, a high tide will come in there and it reaches up there. You know, sometimes it's even higher. You know, in the storm it could easily wash up over the gazebo here. But so anyway, we're just creating that sense that there's a lot of cracks and crevices, and we're doing that basically all with that same. There's going to be layers and layers of color here, so you want to be aware of that. And we're not into the real darks yet. This is just another layer of warm color where the rocks change. I added a little blue in here to make it grayer. Just study the rocks and get inspired by different shapes that you see, and notice how they, you know, go up and down and turn and twist. All right, just using a pointed brush to create these crevices. All right, that side of that rock is raw sienna. These are back, we're back up towards the top of the rock, so it's much warmer. It's filled with reflective light up there. You can do it randomly, but it's good to look at, you know, your inspiration. Look at, in this case, the photo, but, you know, if you're out there, you look in nature, and you look at the area, you get inspired by a certain shape, and then you know, you go back to your painting and fill it in. All right, we're going to get into the darker rocks now. I mean, the crevices, and this is the lower section, so this is going to get the most tidal action, the most waves, the most mud being thrown on it, and rocks being thrown on it, and all this crap being in there. So it's a mess, but it creates these dark, beautiful dark crevices. You don't want them to be black. This is ultramarine with quin sienna, and you want to push it towards the quin sienna so it's warm. You can even put some rose in there. You know, you don't want it to be black. The black creates a hole in your painting, which you don't want. There's a lot of light bouncing in those crevices, and that's why you can see the very subtle warmth of those colors. All right, same thing. You're just looking at your painting, and you're being inspired by the various shapes and cracks and boulders and the way the light hits this and that. Take your time and study it out. Do a good job. In the front here we have a whole section of lower rocks that just, you know, they're just black, they're just dark, but they're warm. It's a dark, warm. But it's where all the activity happens with the waves and the surf and the pounding, you know, it's all in there. That's why these rocks are just worn from age and wear and tear, and, you know, and it comes all the way across here. And I know it looks black in the video, but this is not black. It's very warm. There's a lot of rose and quin sienna and, you know, various colors that warm that up and help bring that forward. All right, above that dark, real dark, there's a warmer. So this is more quinceanna rose, you know, just a warm, you can see that warm area. It really is nice. It's a little turn in the rock where, you know, the dark black doesn't get up there, so you can see it right here. There's a nice warmth, a warm area there above the black, and it helps transition you from that black into the light. You know, it gets rid of that hard edge line of the dark black. You know, it keeps it nice and keeps a nice warm transition. All right, I'm putting the ocean in here. That line is above the ocean. That's part of the sky. So I'm doing a negative painting on the ocean. The ocean is lighter. So I just painted that across with, this is just cobalt and a touch of phthalo blue again. And I'm just creating a little cloud activity back there. Okay, warm that strip up, get rid of the white. All right, we're almost there. Just put a little bit of action on the waves, not too much, just a little movement back there. A little more action on the rocks. Just pay attention to the turn of the rocks, you know, the light changes. And you could spend all day doing these rocks, you know. Enjoy it, whatever, you know, whatever you like. There's so much detail in them that, you know, if you want. So another little crevice there in that rock. All right, I'm going to put a schooner out back there on the water, just to give it a secondary point of interest, they call this. See how the line of the gazebo wall sends you out there, you hit the gazebo, but then you're stuck there. So you want something to look over there to bring you back into the painting. But if I didn't have that boat there, your eye would follow the horizon line and go right off the paper. There's nothing to stop you. So that little boat there, I'm going to make it a schooner. 2 masts. That's the Thomas Lannon out there. All right. Okay, that gives it a nice secondary point of interest. So. All right, so this is a fun little scene at Rockport. It's a nice, easy painting. I'm going to put a little couple in there, a couple of figures. All right. All right, well, thank you. I hope you enjoyed this. It's a good exercise on rocks. Thank you for joining me. I hope you learned a few things. And please subscribe if you haven't. I appreciate it very much. And I will see you soon. Stay safe, please. Thank you. Bye-bye.